Amidst the Catskill Mountains in southeastern New York sits 10 miles of the old Esopus Valley branch of the Hudson and Western Railroad. Chartered in 1885, the original line stretched nearly 150 miles from the Esopus Valley through the mountain grades to the lush farmlands and small cities to the west of Dry Brook. It was a freight-only operation in the beginning. Coal and general merchandise from the ports in the valley, and milk, livestock, grain, and feed returning to the east to be shipped back out at port. With an influx of tourists vacationing in the mountain hamlets up the line, passenger service was eventually introduced in 1902. Prior to World War II, the train actually turned profits from the booming passenger operation. A large station was erected in Midtown Esopus, and double tracking became necessary to accommodate extra trains. Immediately after World War II, however, ridership dramatically began to decline, due mostly to the affordability of automobiles and more direct highway routes. The line was eventually absorbed into the New York Central, which continued to operate the line, mostly freight, and with very limited passenger service. By 1953, scheduled passenger service had officially ceased, and much of the double-track sections were removed. The station at Esopus was eventually converted to a local town hall center. Sadly, during the night of August 23, 1967, the town hall center fell victim to arson and was completely demolished in the fire. The following year, when Penn Central took control of the line, freight service had dwindled to a little more than half a dozen customers. Roughly one train per week was being operated west of the interchange. Crews were only called when a train reached a dozen carloads or more. The line east to the ports was faring no better, seeing utilization less than once per week. Talks of abandonment began to surface. Almost a decade later, Conrail assumed operation of the line, and within the year, the Dry Brook branch was officially abandoned. The interchange was paved over, and sections of the line were torn up. Because of this, a lone Penn Central RS-1 was left behind, landlocked in the old yard. Another decade would pass until a handful of local businessmen expressed interest in reactivating part of the line for local freight and possibly for tourist operation. A contract was signed on April 13, 1987, and the Dry Brook and Esopus Valley Railroad was born. Before track work could commence, the right-of-way needed to be cleared of brush and garbage that had accumulated over the prior decade. Volunteers spent the next 2 years clearing the line and rehabilitating the track just over 9 miles to the old station at Fleischmann's. The line was opened in the winter of 1990, and operations could finally begin at the quarry. It was realized early on that the RS-1 wasn't going to be good enough for handling the heavy gravel trains. Arrangements were made with Conrail to purchase 2 older locomotives, a GP9 and an SW1500. Much to the Dry Brook's satisfaction, Conrail generously included a caboose to sweeten the deal. As of 1991, the Dry Brook and Esopus Valley Railroad is operating 6 trains a week, almost twice than 3 decades earlier. An engine shed and water tower have been erected in preparations for the railroad's next phase of running a tourist train. Lightweight passenger cars were acquired at auction from a now-defunct museum collection in Vermont. An observation car, a coach, a diner, and a power car to provide electricity for the air conditioning. One last passenger car and a locomotive from the museum collection are expected to arrive shortly. At the interchange, the RS-1 waits to greet the pair of Conrail SD-45s as they arrive towing the new additions for the passenger train. Having been stored indoors, a former Lehigh Valley business car and a former Canadian National G16 460 10-wheeler are in exceptionally good condition. Now, on Dry Brook trackage, the RS-1 rolls along at a leisurely pace back to the engine shed with the new additions where restoration work will begin. One year later, in early spring of 1992, the smell of coal smoke lingers over downtown Esopus. The steam locomotive has received extensive running gear work, a new set of flues, a number of cosmetic changes, a fresh coat of paint, and a new number, number 13, after the date when the railroad was started. There's also a new addition to the locomotive's cab. The name Lucky has been painted under the cab windows. The name was chosen by the daughter of the railroad's president, commenting that the engine was very lucky to have found a new home. Today, number 13 will be venturing out of yard limits on a break-in run uphill to the Dry Brook Station and back. The freshly painted Pullman car and the SW-1500 will be coupled behind number 13 for added braking power, and in case she suffers any failures along the way. Word has spread quickly as a number of rail fans have taken position on the highway overpass to see the train roll by. Just down the line, the train had to make an unexpected stop. One of the bearings in the lead truck is running hot. After being addressed by the crew, the train continued on at reduced speed. At milepost 11, the train once again needed to stop. The same bearing is running excessively hot now. It was decided that there would be no more proceeding forward. The switcher would have to tow number 13 back to the engine shed. An hour later, number 13 slowly limps back into the yard. While it seems that Lucky's luck may have run out, at least for today, the issue isn't major. The engine crews will have the bearing fixed in no time. On Memorial Day weekend, number 13 is once again under steam. With the bearing issue resolved and having completed 2 successful break-in runs the week prior, it's finally time to kick off the Dry Brook and Esopus Valley tourist operations. The 5-car train has been assembled and spotted at the station platform for boarding. A sizable crowd gathers as number 13 makes her way through the yard towards the front end of the train. Upon coupling, ticket holders are afforded the opportunity to tour the cab of the locomotive. The president of the railroad was on hand to make a brief speech, thanking all for attending and, of course, to break a bottle of champagne over number 13's coupler. At 11 a.m., number 13 whistles off and departs for Dry Brook, officially beginning the railroad's tourist operations. Flat ground allows for fast running as the train passes milepost 8.5. At Hurley Mountain Rd, the train begins the 3-mile climb to Dry Brook. Number 13 works hard as the grade reaches nearly 3% towards the summit. At the top of the grade sits the Dry Brook Station. This is currently where the passenger trips will terminate. Plans call for them to eventually go an additional 3 miles to the Fleischmann Station upon its restoration, and even further once the recently washed-out bridge at milepost 17.3 is rebuilt. Cresting the grade, number 13 brings the train to a stop to discharge passengers. Here they will be given a chance to partake in a photo run-by. Number 13 backs the train out of the station siding and onto the main line. Cameras are ready. Arriving back in Esopus, number 13 has successfully completed the first scheduled passenger train in nearly 40 years. The Dry Brook and Esopus is to be commended for their efforts in restoring this scenic line and for bringing tourism back to the Catskill Mountains. For more information on number 13 and other models available for Train Simulator, visit K&L Trainz online at www.kltrainz.com. And for information on the Dry Brook and Esopus Valley Railroad route, visit Jointed Rail online at www.jointedrail.com. Thanks for watching.